Let me ask you something very honestly. Why is it that two people can earn the same amount of money, live in the same city, face the same problems? But one keeps growing and the other keeps struggling. The difference is not luck. The difference is not intelligence. The difference is not even opportunity. The difference is mindset. You see, poverty is not always about what is in your pocket. Very often, it is about what is sitting quietly in your mind, whispering doubts, feeding fear, and convincing you that this is all you deserve. Today, we are not here to talk about money. We are here to talk about thinking, because the day your thinking changes, your life has no option but to change with it. So if you are tired of limiting yourself, if you are tired of thinking small, if you are tired of watching others move ahead while you stay stuck, then stay with me, because today we are going to talk about how to get rid of the poor mindset and build a rich one from the inside out. A poor mindset always lives in survival mode. It wakes up every morning not asking how life can become better, but asking how to get through the day without falling apart. It is constantly alert, constantly anxious, constantly calculating losses instead of possibilities. When the mind is trapped in survival, it stops dreaming. It stops planning long term. It stops believing that growth is even an option. The focus becomes very narrow: food on the table, bills to be paid, problems to be avoided. There is no space left for vision, creativity, or courage. This mindset is not about how much money you have, it is about how much fear controls your thinking. Survival thinking is reactive. It waits for life to happen and then responds with stress. When a challenge comes, the first question is not, "What can I learn from this?" but "How will I protect myself?" This constant need for protection slowly shrinks the mind. The person becomes afraid of risks, afraid of change, afraid of stepping out of what is familiar. Even when opportunities appear, they are often ignored because the fear of losing what little is there feels stronger than the hope of gaining something more. Growth requires uncertainty, and survival mindset hates uncertainty. A growth mindset, on the other hand, understands that discomfort is not an enemy. It is a signal of expansion. Growth-oriented thinking asks different questions. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" it asks, "What if I grow?" Instead of asking, "How do I avoid problems?" it asks, "How do I become stronger than my problems?" This shift in questioning changes everything. The mind moves from defense to development, from fear to curiosity. Life stops feeling like a battlefield and starts feeling like a classroom. People stuck in survival mode often believe they must work harder just to stay in the same place. They feel like life is a race they are already losing. This creates exhaustion, not just in the body, but in the soul. When you are tired at the level of the soul, even simple tasks feel heavy. Growth thinking brings back energy because it gives direction. When you know where you are going, effort feels meaningful. When you don't, even small effort feels pointless. Another sign of survival mindset is short-term thinking. Decisions are made only for immediate relief. What will reduce today's stress becomes more important than what will improve my future. This is why people remain stuck in cycles they hate. Temporary comfort becomes more valuable than long-term progress. Growth thinking delays comfort for a greater reward. It understands that a little discomfort today can save years of regret tomorrow. Survival mindset also makes a person overly dependent on external validation and security. Approval from others, stability from circumstances, and guarantees from life become necessities. But life does not come with guarantees. Growth thinking accepts this truth and builds inner strength instead of outer dependence. It focuses on skills, resilience, and adaptability. When your growth is internal, no external change can fully break you. Many people think growth is only for the lucky or talented. This belief itself is born from survival thinking. Growth mindset knows that improvement is a daily practice, not a rare gift. Small habits, repeated consistently, create massive transformation over time. Survival mindset wants immediate results to feel safe. Growth mindset trusts the process even when results are invisible. The most dangerous part of survival thinking is that it normalizes limitation. After a while, people stop questioning why they are stuck. Struggle becomes an identity. This is just how life is, becomes a comforting lie. Growth thinking challenges that lie. It gently but firmly asks, what if life can be better than this? That single question can reopen doors that fear had shut for years. Moving from survival to growth does not require a dramatic life change. It starts with awareness. The moment you notice that your thinking is driven by fear rather than possibility, you regain power. Growth begins the day you stop asking how to survive and start asking how to evolve. Survival keeps you alive. Growth helps you truly live. Complaining feels harmless, almost natural. It gives the mind a sense of relief, like releasing pressure from a tightly closed container. You speak your frustration, you feel lighter for a moment, and you think you have done something useful. But what most people don't realize is that complaining is not a release of weakness, it is the practices of weakness. Every complaint trains the mind to look for what is wrong instead of what is possible. Slowly, silently, this habit reshapes the way a person sees life. A poor mindset complains not because life is hard, but because complaining feels easier than changing. When something goes wrong, the mind looks outward. The boss is unfair, the system is broken, the timing is bad, the people are negative. None of these may be entirely false, but the problem begins when blame becomes a permanent residence instead of a temporary stop. Complaining creates the illusion that you are aware, when in reality you are stuck. Awareness leads to action. Complaining leads to stagnation. Each time you complain, you are unconsciously telling your mind, I am powerless here. Words are not just expressions, they are instructions. When you repeatedly say that things are unfair, impossible, or hopeless, your mind accepts it as truth. Over time, motivation drops, creativity dries up, and effort feels pointless. The energy that could have been used to improve your situation gets consumed by emotional noise. Complaints drain strength while pretending to be honesty. Complaining also creates emotional addiction. The brain gets used to the small comfort that comes from being heard or agreed with. You complain, someone nods, maybe they complain back, and suddenly there is a bond. But it is a bond built on weakness, not growth. This is why environments full of complaints feel heavy. Nothing moves forward, but everyone feels tired. When complaining becomes culture, progress becomes impossible. A rich mindset understands that silence with action is more powerful than noise without direction. It does not mean ignoring problems or pretending everything is perfect. It means recognizing that every problem carries a responsibility. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? The question becomes, what can I do about this? Even when the answer is small, it restores dignity. Action, no matter how limited, returns control to the mind. One of the most dangerous effects of complaining is that it shifts focus from solutions to suffering. The mind becomes trained to observe pain in detail, but avoids examining possibilities. Over time, people become experts in their problems, but beginners in solutions. They can explain exactly why life is difficult, yet they never ask how it can be improved. A growth-oriented mind reverses this habit. It acknowledges pain, but it studies progress. Complaining also affects how others perceive you. People may listen at first, but eventually they distance themselves. Not because they don't care, but because constant negativity is exhausting. Opportunities often come through people, and people are naturally drawn to energy that uplifts, not drains. A poor mindset unknowingly closes doors while explaining why doors are closed. There is also a subtle ego hidden inside complaining. It says, I deserve better, but the world is failing me. This thought protects self-image but kills self-improvement. Growth requires humility, the courage to admit that something within you must change before life does. The moment you replace complaint with curiosity, you step into power. Curiosity asks better questions. It opens new pathways. Complaining keeps you mentally poor because it trades responsibility for comfort. Responsibility is heavy, but it is empowering. Comfort is light, but it weakens. A rich mindset chooses the heavier path because it knows strength is built under load. When you stop verbalizing helplessness and start internalizing accountability, your confidence grows naturally. You no longer wait for life to improve, you improve yourself first. The shift away from complaining does not happen overnight. It starts with awareness. Catch yourself mid-complaint. Pause. Ask, what is one small action I can take instead? That single interruption can slowly rewire your thinking. Over time, the urge to complain weakens and the habit of constructive response strengthens. Life will never stop presenting challenges, but the way you respond determines whether those challenges make you bitter or better. Complaining keeps you stuck in the problem. Responsibility moves you toward a solution. And the moment you choose solutions over complaints, your mindset begins to rise quietly, steadily, powerfully. A poor mindset believes that success is scarce, that there is only a limited amount of achievement, money, respect, or happiness available in the world. It looks at someone else's growth and immediately feels threatened, as if another person's rise automatically means its own fall. This belief is subtle, but it is extremely destructive. It turns life into a silent competition where everyone feels like an enemy and progress feels like a theft rather than an inspiration. When the mind believes success is limited, comparison becomes constant. Instead of asking, how can I improve myself? The focus shifts to, why are they ahead of me? This comparison quietly steals joy. Even achievements lose their sweetness because someone else always seems to have more. The mind never rests. There is always jealousy disguised as motivation and insecurity disguised as ambition. Growth becomes exhausting because it is fueled by fear, not purpose. This scarcity thinking also damages relationships. Instead of celebrating others, the poor mindset resents them. Instead of learning from those who are successful, it avoids them. There is a silent belief that successful people are lucky, selfish, or unfair. This belief protects the ego but limits the mind. When you believe others do not deserve their success, you unconsciously convince yourself that success is not accessible through effort and growth, but through chance. This kills discipline. A rich mindset understands a simple truth: success is not a fixed pie. Someone else's success does not reduce your chances. In fact, it often proves what is possible. When one person grows, they expand the map for everyone else. This mindset sees success as something that multiplies, not something that divides. Knowledge, opportunities, ideas, and skills increase when shared. The more people grow, the more pathways open. Scarcity thinking makes people hoard information. They fear that sharing knowledge will make them replaceable. Growth thinking shares freely knowing that value is not in holding information, but in applying it creatively. When you teach others, you deepen your own understanding. When you support others, you strengthen your own network. Abundance grows through contribution, not protection. Another effect of believing success is limited is fear of collaboration. The poor mindset prefers to work alone, not out of independence, but out of distrust. It assumes others will take advantage or get ahead. Growth thinking understands that collaboration multiplies strength. Two minds together can solve problems that one mind cannot. When people collaborate, skills combine, ideas evolve, and outcomes improve. Scarcity thinking also makes failure feel catastrophic. If success is rare, then failure feels final. One mistake seems like proof that you are not meant to succeed. This creates hesitation, perfectionism, and overthinking. A rich mindset sees failure as feedback, not a verdict. When success is abundant, there is room to try again, adjust, and grow. Failure becomes a teacher, not a sentence. Believing in limited success also traps people in defensive living. They protect their position instead of expanding it. They settle for comfort because risk feels too dangerous. Growth thinking risks because it trusts its ability to adapt. It knows that skills can be rebuilt, opportunities can be recreated, and progress can be regained. Security is found in capability, not in control. One of the most freeing shifts in thinking is realizing that life rewards value, not competition. When you focus on becoming valuable through skills, integrity, effort, and service, success becomes a natural outcome. There is no need to push others down to rise. Growth mindset lifts itself by lifting others. The belief that success is limited often comes from early experiences of lack, comparison, or pressure. But beliefs are learned, and anything learned can be unlearned. The moment you start appreciating others' success instead of resenting it, your mind begins to change. Appreciation trains the brain to recognize possibility. Resentment trains it to recognize threat. When you truly accept that success is not scarce, your energy shifts. You stop competing and start creating. You stop comparing and start improving. You stop envying and start evolving. Life becomes less about proving and more about becoming. And in that shift, growth stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like a natural expansion of who you are meant to be. A poor mindset is deeply afraid of failure, not because failure is painful, but because it is misunderstood. Failure is seen as a final judgment on worth, intelligence, and capability. One mistake feels like proof that you are not good enough, not smart enough, not meant for success. This fear quietly controls decisions, limits actions, and shrinks potential. Many people don't fail because they try and fall. They fail because they never truly try at all. When fear of failure dominates the mind, safety becomes the priority. People choose what feels familiar over what could be meaningful. They stay in situations that drain them because the unknown feels more dangerous than the known discomfort. Dreams are postponed, ideas are buried, and opportunities are ignored, not because they are impossible, but because they carry risk. The poor mindset confuses comfort with security, not realizing that comfort often hides slow decay. Fear of failure also creates overthinking. Every decision is analyzed from all angles, not to improve it, but to avoid blame. The mind imagines worst-case scenarios and treats them as inevitable. This mental rehearsal of disaster exhausts emotional energy before action even begins. Over time, confidence weakens, not because of actual failure, but because of imagined defeat. A rich mindset understands that failure is not the opposite of success, it is part of the process. Every skill you admire today was once awkward, slow, and imperfect. Growth requires repeated attempts, and repeated attempts guarantee mistakes. Failure becomes information. It shows what works, what doesn't, and what needs adjustment. Instead of asking, "Why did this go wrong?" the growth-oriented mind asks, "What is this teaching me?" People with a poor mindset often personalize failure. They say, "I failed," instead of "this attempt failed." That small difference matters. When failure becomes identity, it crushes self-belief. Growth thinking separates the person from the outcome. You are not your results. You are the one learning from them. This separation protects self-worth while encouraging progress. Fear of failure also makes people hide. They avoid visibility, feedback, and responsibility. Criticism feels threatening because it is interpreted as rejection. But without feedback, improvement is impossible. A rich mindset seeks feedback even when it is uncomfortable. It understands that clarity is more valuable than comfort. Honest feedback shortens the learning curve and strengthens resilience. Another effect of fear-based thinking is perfectionism. The poor mindset waits for the perfect moment, perfect plan, perfect confidence. But perfection is a moving target that never arrives. Growth mindset starts before feeling ready. It trusts that clarity comes through action, not waiting. Momentum builds confidence, not the other way around. Fear of failure also limits ambition. People lower their goals to protect their ego. They aim for what is safe rather than what is meaningful. But a life lived too safely often ends with regret. Growth thinking allows itself to want more, not out of greed, but out of potential. It understands that aiming higher does not guarantee success, but aiming low guarantees limitation. One of the biggest shifts happens when failure is redefined. Instead of seeing it as a loss, it becomes a step. Instead of shame, it brings insight. Instead of stopping, it redirects. When failure loses its power to define you, it also loses its power to control you. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move despite it. Overcoming fear of failure does not mean becoming fearless. It means becoming resilient. It means trusting yourself to handle outcomes, not control them. Life will always include uncertainty, but growth explains that uncertainty is not a threat, it is a doorway. When you stop fearing failure, effort becomes lighter, creativity returns, and progress accelerates. You stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, "What if this is how I grow?" And in that shift, the poor mindset begins to dissolve, replaced by confidence built not on perfection, but on persistence. A poor mindset is always searching for shortcuts. It wants the reward without the process, the result without the resistance, the destination without the journey. This mindset is not born out of laziness alone, it is born out of impatience and insecurity. Deep inside, there is a fear that if the process takes too long, the person might not be strong enough to endure it. So the mind looks for faster ways, easier ways, and often dishonest ways. Shortcuts promise quick relief. They whisper, "Why struggle when there is an easier path?" And for a moment, they feel smart. But what shortcuts really do is steal growth. When you bypass the process, you bypass the lessons hidden inside it. Skills remain shallow, character remains weak, and confidence remains borrowed. True confidence is built by effort. Shortcut confidence collapses at the first sign of pressure. A poor mindset often underestimates the value of struggle. It sees struggle as punishment rather than preparation. It compares its behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel and concludes that success should be faster. But growth is invisible in the beginning. Roots grow before fruits appear. When you rush results, you pull the plant before it matures, then blame life for the failure. Shortcut thinking also makes people chase trends instead of mastery. Whatever looks profitable today becomes the focus without understanding the foundation behind it. When trends change, confusion follows. A rich mindset chooses mastery over trends. It knows that skills compound over time. What you learn deeply today will serve you for years, even decades. Shortcuts also damage discipline. Discipline grows when effort is repeated consistently, even when motivation is low. Shortcut mentality waits for motivation, inspiration, or perfect timing. But motivation is unreliable. Discipline is trained. Growth thinking shows up even on days when progress feels slow and invisible. Another danger of shortcuts is that they create dependency. People rely on hacks, tricks, or external systems instead of developing internal strength. When those systems fail, they feel lost. A rich mindset builds capability from within. It values understanding over memorization, principles over tricks. When you understand the why, you can adapt to any how. Shortcuts also distort values. When speed becomes more important than integrity, people compromise ethics. They justify dishonesty by calling it survival or smartness. But compromised values create inner conflict. Even if success comes, peace does not. Growth thinking understands that how you achieve something matters as much as what you achieve. There is also a hidden arrogance in shortcut thinking. It assumes that the rules apply to others, not to you. It believes that effort is for ordinary people, while you deserve special treatment. This belief disconnects you from reality. Nature rewards consistency, not entitlement. Every lasting achievement follows universal principles of effort, patience, and learning. A rich mindset respects time. It understands that time is not the enemy, impatience is. Time allows learning to settle, skills to sharpen, and judgment to mature. What comes quickly often leaves quickly. What is built slowly becomes stable. Growth thinking trades speed for strength. Moving away from shortcuts requires humility. It means accepting that you are a beginner, that you must learn, practice, fail, and try again. This humility is not weakness, it is wisdom. Every expert you admire once struggled with basics. The difference is they stayed. When you stop chasing shortcuts, your focus shifts. You stop asking, how can I get this fast? And start asking, how can I do this right? That question alone changes your behavior. You invest in learning. You commit to consistency. You become patient with progress. In the long run, shortcuts delay success while the process accelerates it. What feels slow today becomes effortless tomorrow. And when success finally arrives through effort, it feels different. It feels earned. It feels stable. It feels peaceful. That is the quiet power of choosing growth over shortcuts, depth over speed, and mastery over quick wins. A poor mindset survives on blame. When something goes wrong, the first instinct is to look outward and assign fault. Parents did not support enough, the system is unfair. The boss is biased. Society is against me. While some of these may contain truth, the problem begins when blame becomes a habit rather than an observation. Blame offers emotional comfort, but it quietly steals power. The moment you blame someone else, you hand over control of your life to them. Blaming others feels relieving because it protects the ego. It allows the mind to believe, I am capable, but the circumstances are wrong. This belief reduces pain in the short term, but it creates long-term weakness. Growth requires responsibility, and responsibility cannot exist where blame dominates. When the mind is busy defending itself, it stops developing itself. A rich mindset understands that responsibility is not about guilt, it is about ownership. Ownership is power. When you take responsibility, even for things you did not fully cause, you regain the ability to respond. You may not control what happens to you, but you always control how you respond. Blame says, I can't. Responsibility says, what can I do now? Blame also keeps people emotionally stuck in the past. They replay old injustices, unfair decisions, and missed chances, carrying resentment like a heavy bag. This emotional weight slows progress. Growth thinking learns from the past, but it does not live there. It extracts lessons, then moves forward lighter, clearer, and stronger. Another danger of blaming others is that it damages self-trust. When you constantly explain failure through external factors, you never learn your own strengths and weaknesses honestly. Improvement requires accurate self-awareness. A rich mindset asks uncomfortable questions. What could I have done better? Where did I hesitate? What skills am I missing? These questions feel heavy, but they lead to clarity. Blame also poisons relationships. When people feel blamed, they become defensive. Communication breaks down. Collaboration becomes impossible. Growth-oriented thinking replaces accusation with understanding. It does not mean tolerating mistreatment. It means responding wisely rather than reacting emotionally. Emotional intelligence grows where blame ends. A poor mindset often believes that taking responsibility means accepting injustice. This is not true. You can acknowledge unfairness without surrendering your power. Responsibility is not about agreeing with what happened. It is about choosing how you move forward. Even in unfair situations, your response shapes your future more than the event itself. Blame also blocks learning. If everything is someone else's fault, there is nothing to learn. But when you accept responsibility, every experience becomes a teacher. Even painful ones carry insight. Growth mindset treats life as feedback, not punishment. One of the hardest shifts is realizing that blaming others delays freedom. As long as someone else is responsible for your situation, you are waiting for them to change before you can grow. Responsibility breaks that waiting pattern. It puts the focus back where it belongs, on your choices, your habits, your effort. Taking responsibility is not easy. It requires courage, humility, and honesty. But it builds self-respect. When you know that your actions matter, confidence grows naturally. You stop feeling like a victim of life and start feeling like a participant in it. When blame fades, clarity increases, energy returns, focus sharpens. You stop wasting mental space on excuses and start investing it in progress. Life does not suddenly become easier, but you become stronger. The moment you replace blame with responsibility, something powerful happens. You reclaim authorship of your life. You stop waiting for permission to grow. You stop expecting rescue from outside. And in that shift, mental poverty dissolves, replaced by a mindset rooted in strength, ownership, and forward movement. A poor mindset wants rewards before readiness. It desires results without investing in the skills required to sustain them. There is an impatience to be seen, to be successful, to be rewarded, even when the foundation is weak or incomplete. This way of thinking does not come from confidence. It comes from insecurity. Deep down, there is a fear that if learning takes too long, recognition might never come. So effort is rushed and preparation is ignored. When learning is skipped, expectations become unrealistic. People want promotions without competence, income without expertise, respect without contribution. When reality does not match these expectations, frustration grows. The mind begins to feel cheated, as if life has broken a promise. But life never promised rewards without effort. Growth thinking understands that value comes before reward. You are paid not for what you want, but for what you can offer. A poor mindset often treats learning as a burden rather than an investment. Studying feels like a delay, Practice feels like punishment, and repetition feels unnecessary. But skills are built through repetition. Mastery is not created in moments of inspiration, but in hours of deliberate effort. A rich mindset respects the process of learning because it understands that learning compounds. What you practice today improves what you earn tomorrow. Spending without learning also creates dependency. People rely on credentials, titles, or shortcuts instead of genuine capability. When circumstances change, they feel exposed. A rich mindset builds adaptability by learning continuously. It understands that the world evolves, and skills must evolve with it. Learning becomes a lifelong habit, not a phase. Another danger of skipping learning is shallow confidence. Confidence without competence is fragile. It breaks under pressure. Growth thinking builds quiet confidence, the kind that does not need validation because it is rooted in ability. When you know you have put in the work, doubt has less power over you. Poor mindset often confuses consumption with learning. Watching, scrolling, or listening creates the illusion of progress without actual improvement. Real learning requires application. Growth thinking practices what it consumes. It tests ideas, makes mistakes, and adjusts. Knowledge becomes wisdom only when used. When people expect rewards too early, they become discouraged easily. Progress feels slow because expectations are high. A rich mindset sets realistic timelines. It knows that seasons of learning come before seasons of earning. Patience becomes a strength, not a weakness. Learning also builds humility. It reminds you that you are always a student. This humility keeps ego in check and curiosity alive. Poor mindset resists humility because it fears looking inexperienced. Growth mindset embraces it because it values progress over image. Another important shift happens when learning becomes intentional. Instead of random effort, growth thinking focuses on building relevant skills. Time is invested wisely. Learning is directed, not scattered. This focus accelerates progress and increases confidence. When you invest in learning before expecting rewards, something powerful happens. You become less anxious about outcomes and more engaged in improvement. Effort feels meaningful, progress feels earned, and success, when it arrives, feels sustainable. The world does not reward desire, it rewards value. When you commit to learning, you increase your value naturally. Opportunities begin to find you because you are prepared. Growth mindset understands this truth deeply. It knows that learning first is not delay, it is acceleration. The moment you shift from demanding rewards to developing skills, your mindset begins to rise. You stop chasing outcomes and start building capability. And in that shift, success stops being a wish and starts becoming a natural consequence of who you are becoming. A poor mindset is heavily influenced by its environment, often without realizing it. Thoughts do not form in isolation. They are shaped by conversations, attitudes, and emotional tones that surround a person every day. When someone is constantly exposed to negativity, limitation, and hopelessness, even a strong mind begins to weaken. Over time, this environment starts to feel normal and low expectations become acceptable. What you repeatedly hear becomes what you eventually believe. People with a poor mindset often underestimate how much their surroundings affect their thinking. They believe they are independent thinkers, yet their language, fears, and excuses closely resemble those around them. When complaints are common, complaining feels justified. When mediocrity is normal, excellence feels unrealistic. The environment quietly sets the ceiling for ambition. A rich mindset is intentional about its environment. It understands that growth is not just about inner strength, but also about external influence. Being surrounded by people who think bigger challenges you to think bigger. Exposure to positive, disciplined, and purpose-driven individuals reshapes your standards. Suddenly, things that once felt impossible start feeling achievable. Negative environments drain energy. Conversations revolve around problems, not possibilities. Success is criticized and effort is mocked. Anyone trying to improve is labeled unrealistic or arrogant. This kind of environment punishes growth. To fit in, people shrink themselves. Dreams are softened, goals are lowered, and ambition is hidden. Growth thinking refuses to shrink. It understands that outgrowing an environment is not betrayal, it is evolution. Another danger of a limiting environment is emotional contagion. Emotions spread faster than logic. When fear, anger, or hopelessness dominate a group, they become shared experiences. Over time, emotional states turn into mental habits. A rich mindset protects its emotional space. It chooses exposure wisely, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. Environment is not only people, it is also information. What you read, watch, and listen to shapes your perception of reality. Constant exposure to negativity trains the brain to expect failure. Growth-oriented thinking filters information carefully. It consumes content that educates, inspires, and challenges rather than content that numbs, distracts, or discourages. A poor mindset often stays in limiting environments out of loyalty or fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being alone, fear of change. But growth sometimes requires distance. Distance creates clarity. When you step away, you see patterns you could not see before. You realize how much of your thinking was borrowed. A rich mindset understands that environment does not define destiny, but it strongly influences direction. You can grow in a difficult environment, but it takes far more energy. When you align your surroundings with your goals, progress becomes natural instead of forced. Growth becomes supported rather than resisted. Another powerful aspect of environment is standards. Standards are unspoken rules about what is acceptable. In a poor environment, laziness is tolerated, excuses are celebrated, and effort is rare. In a growth environment, discipline is normal, learning is valued, and progress is expected. You rise to the level of the standards around you. Changing your environment